See, that wasn't so hard.
Hey, welcome to ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy. Daredevil Born Again is still a little over a year away, but every new announcement gives us a better idea of what the show is going to look like, and the anticipation is high. Daredevil, fan favorite comics character. Charlie Cox, beloved in the role. And the Disney Plus show is following arguably the best Netflix Marvel show produced. Now we know that Vincent D'Onofrio is returning as Kingpin, and it's likely that we'll see Alaqua Cox as Echo. I'm sure we'll also see a few other familiar faces from the MCU, and maybe even from the Netflix Defenders-verse. After all, it wouldn't be a Disney Plus show without some random cameos.
I know you can't wait to see Wong, I get it.
But I think there's one MCU villain in particular that's going to return. In fact, I think he's going to be the big bad of Born Again and the main villain that Daredevil's going to end up fighting.
Who is it, Mysterio?
No, it's, oh my god, yes it is Mysterio! Way to go, high five! Yes, I think Mysterio will be in Daredevil Born Again. So in case you forgot, Mysterio last appeared in Spider-Man Far From Home, played by Jake Gyllenhaal. Well, technically he last appeared in No Way Home in reused footage where he revealed Peter's secret identity to the entire world.
What the
Mysterio, aka Quentin Beck, was your typical MCU adaptation of a comic book villain. First, they took his main shtick and gave it a more grounded basis in reality. In this case, an illusionist who uses special effects and melodrama to deceive his enemies and mess with their heads. Then they connected it to the larger cinematic universe by tying Beck's motive to Tony Stark. Upset that Stark wasted his invention and renamed it Barf, he uses Stark's death to win the hearts and minds as a new superhero. All this was to gain control of Stark's way too powerful Edith glasses. Finally, they found a way to give Mysterio his classic look, crystal ball head and all, without it seeming silly or out of place in the MCU's relatively grounded world. Mysterio supposedly dies from a bullet wound at the end of Far From Home, but Beck used fake outs throughout the film, and it wouldn't be too hard to use holographic projectors to fake his own death too. Gyllenhaal's Mysterio is probably still out there somewhere waiting to pop back up into the MCU, just like so many supervillains before him, like Abomination, Batroc, Leader, Trevor Slattery.
Who are you? Yeah, but why is it going to be a Daredevil? And why now?
Well, for one thing, even though he's a key member of the Sinister Six, Mysterio is just as much of a Daredevil villain as he is a Spider-Man villain.
Now, just say right now?
Well, look, in the comics, the two heroes both live in New York and work as street-level crime fighters, and eventually they become close friends. It was no coincidence that Matt Murdock's MCU debut was coming to Peter's defense, literally as his lawyer in No Way Home.
I'm a really good lawyer.
Daredevil has faced off with Mysterio many times in the comics, including in Kevin Smith's famous Guardian Devil arc. Yes, that same Kevin Smith he wrote for the comics. We'll get to that arc specifically in a minute because I think that Born Again is going to borrow a lot from it. And remember, Born Again isn't just another Daredevil project. It's the full introduction to the MCU version of this character. Even with Charlie Cox reprising the role, we know that the MCU version will be a slightly different take on the character than the Netflix version. Now, we already got a taste of the new Daredevil in No Way Home, and so did She-Hulk.
Morning.
This new Daredevil is still a gritty street fighter, but it's like some weight has been lifted off his shoulders. He's allowed to smile and have some happiness in his life. Even his costume reflects this, with gold added to the classic red. He's not just the devil of Hell's Kitchen. He's a bona fide red and gold superhero like Iron Man, one that kids can dress up as and look up to. So in that sense, Mysterio fits as his antagonist more than a ruthless killer like Kingpin. Mysterio is about as colorful a bad guy as you can get. Not just literally. His entire thing is grandiose dramatics, literal smoke and mirrors.
This is for my family!
And while he's just as evil as Kingpin, Jake Gyllenhaal plays Mysterio with a lighthearted charm. He's fun to watch, perfect for Disney Plus and the new Daredevil. Now we know that Kingpin will be in Born Again. He'll probably be sporting an eye patch since the events of Hawkeye, a fitting fate for Daredevil's arch nemesis.
In the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king.
But he probably won't be the main antagonist. Now, we've seen that movie before.
TV show.
Whatever. Instead, he'll likely play a supporting role to the story like he did in Season 2 of Netflix's Daredevil. Or he could be a red herring, with all signs pointing to him being the man behind everything until late in the season when it's revealed that it was Mysterio all along.
What a twist!
In fact, I think that's exactly what will happen. A big clue to how Kingpin and Mysterio will play into the new show comes from its title, Born Again. Clearly, Disney thought it was being cute with this title because Daredevil is being born again into the MCU, similar to how Spider-Man Homecoming was a reference to the character coming home from Sony to the MCU. It can also be used as a religious term, as in Born Again Christianity. This is a fitting title given the importance of Catholicism to Matt's character and backstory. But perhaps most importantly, Born Again is the name of an iconic Daredevil story written in the 1980s by Frank Miller. That story arc focused on Kingpin systematically ruining Matt Murdock's life. I mean, it's brutal. He blows up his apartment, takes all his money, gets him disbarred, attacks his loved ones with an imposter Daredevil. Kingpin doesn't want to just break Murdoch physically, he wants to destroy his very soul.
I was wondering what would break first, your spirit or your body.
Some of this has already been adapted for the Netflix series, notably the imposter Daredevil, so it's unlikely that the new series will be a straight adaptation of the Born Again comic, but it will probably adapt Guardian Devil, the Kevin Smith arc that I mentioned earlier. Guardian Devil, which began in 1998, is a spiritual sequel to Frank Miller's Born Again comic. Again, it focuses on Murdoch's life being destroyed one piece at a time, but this time it's Mysterio behind everything, and it gets dark. I mean, real dark. Foggy is framed for murder and imprisoned. Mysterio convinces Matt that a newborn baby is the Antichrist, leading Matt to almost kill the baby.
First of all, that's horrible.
He also convinces Karen Page that she has HIV.
They'll believe anything.
And that's before hiring Bullseye to lure Daredevil out by murdering her along with a bunch of nuns. This is some real downer stuff, but it could be exactly what the Disney Plus series needs to stay dark and serious. Rather than the type of bloody violence the House of Mouse shies away from, it's psychological torture. And I'm not saying that Born Again will adapt Guardian Devil like page for page.
Like Karen Page. I see what you did there.
High five. He gets me. I doubt they'll use the HIV plot, for example, especially since in the comics her diagnosis is based on Karen Page's past as a heroin-addicted porn star. Something tells me Disney won't be using that backstory for Deborah Ann Wolf's Karen. But the general conceit of Mysterio manipulating Matt's life in several awful ways could be a great arc for the new show.
But why? Why does Mysterio hate Daredevil so much? Everybody loves Daredevil. He's handsome and brave and handsome.
We're all feeling this, right? It's not just me.
Well, in the comics, it's because Mysterio is dying of brain cancer and he wants to go out with a big supervillain bang. But I think Jake Gyllenhaal's Mysterio will have a different motive. Quentin Beck clearly has a huge ego, right? Hating Tony Stark is only part of his motivation. A lot of it comes down to his own narcissism. Only he is worthy of Edith. And when we last saw him, he was publicly outsmarted and defeated by Spider-Man. If he did survive, that would be humiliating for him. His reputation is everything, so he probably spent months creating a grand plan, something epic that would prove his genius to the world. Afraid that Spider-Man will defeat him yet again, he sets his sights lower to a lesser-known, smaller-scale superhero.
Like Speedball.
Yes, like like Daredevil. Like Daredevil. We're talking about Daredevil.
Oh, okay, yeah, Daredevil. Yeah, I'm on the same page now. Same page, same joke from earlier.
Right, so Mysterio can't beat Thor in a physical matchup, and he can't out-magic Doctor Strange. But if Mysterio can take the Man Without Fear and break him into an inconsolable mess, it would be a real confidence booster. Now, the beauty of using this arc for Born Again is because it plays perfectly for an 18-episode TV series. Each episode can focus on a different way that Mysterio manipulates Matt, using different characters and villains from the Daredevil canon. It would be similar to Hush, the Batman arc from 2002. Over the course of a year, Hush attacked Batman from every angle. The arc played like a Batman Greatest Hits album and had Poison Ivy, Catwoman, Clayface, Superman. It teased the return of Jason Todd, had multiple red herrings, and eventually revealed that the Riddler was secretly behind everything all along.
What?
Born Again can be Daredevil's Hush, with Mysterio filling in the Riddler mastermind role. Kingpin would be the obvious red herring, but each episode can bring in characters from every corner of Daredevil's world. Obviously, that includes Karen and Foggy.
Simple. Step one, we work together.
It's a good bet we'll be seeing Echo too. She-Hulk could appear for an episode, likely in a love triangle situation with Karen. And there could be surprise cameos from the Defenders-verse, like Jessica Jones or Frank Castle. These could even serve as backdoors to introduce these characters to the MCU. Born Again can also introduce MCU versions of Daredevil characters that we haven't seen before or barely got to see, like the Owl or Stiltman. It can even bring back or reinvent other characters like Bullseye and Typhoid Mary. Remember, Mysterio is throwing everything he can at Matt over 18 episodes. There is a lot of room for these characters. We'll probably see one or two major MCU cameos as well. Doctor Strange is featured prominently in the Guardian Devil comics, and it wouldn't be hard to work him into Born Again. While his corner of the Marvel Universe is totally opposite from Matt's, they do live just a few subway stops away from each other, so it's not implausible that Strange could show up or one of the Avengers. This is Mysterio we're talking about. So even if, say, Paul Rudd shows up, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's actually Ant-Man. It could be a holographic projection or some other illusion. These illusions will play really well against Matt's skill set. Just like Spider-Man used his Peter Tingle to see past Mysterio's tricks, Matt will have to rely on his heightened senses. He'll have to learn that not every crisis can be solved with punching. That's exactly why Mysterio is the perfect villain for a Daredevil Disney Plus show. So far, a driving theme for the MCU shows has been breaking their lead characters down to their core essence. What drives them? What's their place in the larger Marvel world? And more importantly, where does it lead them next? Usually these shows set up elements to a larger story in the MCU. WandaVision led directly into Multiverse of Madness. Ms. Marvel's setting up the Marvels. New World Order will follow Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Born Again will likely do the same for Matt and set up whatever role he'll be serving in phases 5 and 6 of the MCU. And I think Mysterio's plot will drag Matt into this larger world mainly through one character in particular.
Stiltman.
What? No, She-Hulk. She-Hulk.
Oh, well, I was close.
Yeah, buddy, you were close. High five. Now, I don't know if this was the plan all along, but after fans got to see the crazy chemistry between Tatiana Maslany and Charlie Cox, it definitely gave some ideas to Kevin. They are just too good together, and She-Hulk ended with them at a pretty strong place, even if they are living 3,000 miles apart. I think this romance will be a key part of Born Again's story. While it hasn't been announced, it is likely that Deborah Ann Woll will reprise her role as Karen Page, just as likely that former Mighty Duck Eldon Hansen is coming back as Foggy. Karen is one of Daredevil's primary romantic interests in the comics, along with Elektra and Mila Donovan. So is Black Widow, actually, but obviously that's not going to happen in the MCU. If anything, She-Hulk is filling in that role. At the end of the Netflix series, Karen became a partner in a new law firm with Foggy and Matt. It's likely this will also be where Born Again starts off. Everything will be going well for Matt. His new law firm has some wealthy clients. He's in a sexy relationship with Jen Walters. Kingpin is currently MIA after being shot in the face.
Eye to eye.
This stable period in Matt's life is the perfect time for Mysterio to strike and tear it all down. And he'll start by playing on the lingering feelings between Karen and Matt, driving a wedge between him and Jen. Or Jen will drive a wedge between him and Karen, eventually leading down a path that ends with her tragic death. Karen's death was a pivotal moment for Matt's character in the comics, like Gwen Stacy's death was for Peter Parker. Her death will show that the MCU has not softened Daredevil. There's real stakes and real tragedy associated with the character. It also clears the way for his relationship with She-Hulk to become a real, solid part of his character, and not just like some fun fan shipping. If She-Hulk and Daredevil fall truly in love, it gives both some serious stakes in the upcoming Avengers films. You see, superheroes typically won't hesitate to sacrifice themselves for the greater good. They'll jump in front of a bullet to save an innocent bystander. But if their loved ones are threatened, now they have a moral conundrum. Now they have to think before they leap.
Now shoot!
Kang could also use the love that Jen and Matt have for one another against them and force them to make some really tough decisions in the coming conflict of the Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars. And, like all good MCU streaming shows, Born Again will plant those seeds for future stakes. Mysterio has the specific skill set to drive Daredevil's story along this path, and as a previous Spider-Man villain played by an A-list actor, he'll give Daredevil's MCU show the star power that it deserves. He's flashy and colorful, definitely part of Disney's MO, but like any good Daredevil villain, he's ruthless and deadly.
Just kill the kids myself.
So while all this is still just conjecture, I'm definitely going to be watching those early episodes of Born Again with a magnifying glass. You know, just in case Jake Gyllenhaal is lurking somewhere in the background. But what do you think, team? Should Mysterio be the main villain in Daredevil Born Again? Let me know in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe and smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.